I can bring you $3 billion of investment in 1 year, me, through my own contacts. The problem is that the government doesn't want foreign investors. It is not the amount of foreign investment that counts, it is the number of foreign investment. This government represents everything we stand against as the ICC. Corruption, nepotism, chauvinism, homophobia, protectionism. In my opinion, they should send all the judges back home and hire new judges totally. It's very easy to accuse the Georgian authorities to be corrupt, but corruption is widespread everywhere. Within the civil society of Georgia, within the diplomatic corps, and within international financial institutions. For me, today, the corruption is worse than during the Shevardnadze's time. Alex, thank you very much for visiting us today. It's always a pleasure to have interviews with you and talk with you. Yes, I was appointed a couple of weeks ago as chairman of the Regional Consultative Group. The Regional Consultative Group includes all the ICCs of North Africa, the broader Middle East, including Iran, the Caucasus, Central Asia, till Pakistan. So there are about 20 or 22 ICCs in this region, and my responsibility would be to strengthen all those ICCs, to continue opening new ICCs in the region, to contributing to the improvement of the business climate in those countries by coordinating with the chairs of the ICCs in every country, and to move the ICC agenda forward. So it's like quite a big responsibility, but I'm very flattered and honored to have been chosen to take over this responsibility. And I'll be starting working from June after our General Assembly confirms me. I will be taking over this responsibility. Let me tell you, first of all, to have a Georgian appointed as the regional chair is already something good for the country, because this is the first time a Georgian is appointed to chair the regional consultative group of the ICC. Then, of course, I mean, me being actively involved with the decision makers in the whole region, I mean, from North Africa to the border with China, will have an impact, because it will give Georgia exposure. I mean, of course, I will be interacting with everybody in my capacity of chair of the regional consultative board, but still, you know, as a Georgian, it will always be my honor and prerogative to promote Georgia and to speak about Georgia to all those decision makers all over this part of the world. So this will definitely have a positive impact. Now it will be up to me, of course, I mean, depending on the energy that I deploy to move Georgia also forward. You know, I mean, as chair of the ICC in Georgia already, you know, our positions are very open and we're very candid, and we do speak with the authorities. So hopefully now the authorities will be a little more attentive to what we will have to say regarding the improvement of the business climate in the country. Yes, I mean, that's probably the fourth center of entrepreneurship that the ICC has opened worldwide already. And we're very lucky to have it in Georgia, because it will cover the region. And having Georgia again like the center of the region to develop entrepreneurship in the region is a fantastic thing for the country. So technically what the center will do, it will be training private entrepreneurs and SMEs to best business practices, whether it is e-commerce, whether it is cross-trade border. So the aim is to bring those individual entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises to international level of proficiency. And for that, there will be a lot of trainings. We are currently preparing the whole project. I mean, we are working on it, preparing the business plans and all this, just to make sure how much funds we need to make it happen, because it will also cover the region, not only Georgia. And I believe that within 1 month we will have everything ready. Then we will be talking with international donors for the region to get involved and help financing this operation, because it has a tremendous development impact on the whole region. And I guess that by early 2024 we'll be already up and operational, if not before. Technically, what we will do once we will be up and running, we will announce it publicly about the trainings that we will be organizing. Some of the trainings will be in Tbilisi, some of the trainings will be in the region, some of the trainings will be international, some of the trainings will be both physical and via Zoom or something like this. And therefore, there will be a campaign, advertising campaign, to inform the people that this is coming, that what are the benefits for them, how can they register, where they should register, and all this kind of stuff. So it will not be difficult at all, it will be very easy. Plus there are certain business organizations that do deal with SMEs already, and we will be coordinating with them as well. So this is the easiest part of the project, as a matter of fact, how to get people, and there will be a lot of interest. There will be a lot of training, trainings regarding the Incoterms, the transportation terms, so people better understand if they want to export or import, under which denomination they need to do it. Then about banking also, trade finance, commercial contracts, and arbitration. I mean, many things that can benefit the e-commerce. This is the first project that we have. It's a pretty big one also, because here in Georgia and definitely in the region, very few companies do use e-commerce. I mean, probably some companies don't use it at all, and they have the potential to use it and to increase their sales without much effort. So there will be a whole project regarding e-commerce to help developing business activity of entrepreneurs through e-commerce, and this would definitely lead to more prosperous businesses in the region. Well, unfortunately, we don't have as much foreign direct investment as we need to move the country forward. And here I'm going to be very open and frank with you. I mean, what I will tell you is what I repeated all the time and since years. The problem is that the government doesn't want foreign investors. This is the impression that we have. And although publicly, you have this Enterprise Georgia and the Ministry of Economy, and then they go to conferences internationally and they invite people to come, but all this is cosmetic. If you look at what happened during the past 10 years, foreign investors have been very badly treated in Georgia. Many of them were defrauded from their investments. Many of them were defrauded by the courts from their investments. Many of them were racketeered. Many of them lost their residency permits. Many of them were pressured to give up shares in their companies. And Georgia gained a very bad reputation internationally within the spheres of serious investors. No one wants to touch Georgia. Many of them did invest millions and millions of dollars, and then the government backtracked when the people started moving, like if I'm speaking of those hydropowers that were never completed because the government was too scared of of opposing the peoples who were opposing those hydropowers. So, you know, when you have a government that has no will to make things happen, a government that is not willing to lose some popularity to move the economy forward, then of course the foreign investors wouldn't be interested. If you look at the figures of foreign investment, I mean, since 10 years till 2021, we were revolving between 1.2, 1.5, 1.7 billion dollars, which is absolutely nothing at the scale of a country. In 2022, we had $2 billion, but out of those $2 billion, there was $400 million coming from real estate investments. Those are mainly coming from Russia, which brings us back, whereas in 2021, the figure was 40 million. This means we increased $360 million in 1 year thanks to the investments that came from Russia. Now, if you look at the structure of the FDI, as presented by Geostat, the Statistic Department of Georgia, about 60 to 65% of this FDI comes from reinvestment. What's reinvestment? It means a company that is identified as a foreign company. Here, if you have 10% foreign capital in your company, you are considered to be a foreign company. So if you take, for example, Makti, and Makti did not distribute the dividends to their shareholders and kept the money in the bank, it is considered to be a reinvestment, which is technically not an investment. Then you have like 10-15% that is money borrowed from abroad, you know, from the big financial institutions or big international financial institutions. And this is considered to be FDI, but this is money that has to go back. The real equity FDI usually revolves around for the past 9 years, since till 2021, to around 15%. This year it was 30% because of the real estate investment. So even if you take 30% of $2 billion, is $600 million. What's $600 million at the scale of a country? It's peanuts, it's absolutely nothing. So the government doesn't want to encourage foreign investors for 2 reasons. First of all, because there is chauvinism in the country. The government is chauvinistic, they don't like foreigners, and most of the Georgians don't like foreigners. They like foreigners when they come, you know, for 2 days to visit, and they sit and they drink, and yes. But in general, most of the Georgians don't like to see foreigners making money in Georgia. As a matter of fact, can you give me the name of one foreigner in the past 20 years who made money in Georgia? Just give me the name of one. You wouldn't find one. But I can give you the name of hundreds who made money in Russia or in Europe or in the Far East. Okay? So this is one. The second thing, you know, when eventually he came to power, and he asked how much FDI there is in the country, and they told them 1 billion, 1.5 billion. Probably he thought, you know, me and my partners, we will put one and one. We don't need foreign investors. But the problem is that it is not the amount of foreign investment that counts. It is the number of foreign investments. This means one investment of $1 billion is one CEO, one CFO, one cleaning lady. 1,000 investments of $1 million, which totals $1 billion, is 1,000 CEO, 1,000 CFO, 1,000 cleaning lady, and 1,000 happy people who are calling their friends and their families and their relatives, telling them, come to Georgia and invest, and it snowballs. And this is how you build the economy. So that's unfortunately the case of FDI in Georgia. And as long as this government is in power, the approach is going to be the same. I mean, we have no illusions. And that's why we don't deal with the government anymore. We don't speak to them because, you know, for 10 years we spoke to them and they didn't want to change policy. It takes political will. If there is political will to protect foreign investors here, I can bring you $3 billion of investment in 1 year, me, through my own contacts. I don't dare bring anybody to Georgia because I cannot guarantee that whoever you bring to Georgia will be protected. The only foreign investors who are making some money in Georgia are the ones who are in partnership with the government. Then they can do whatever they want, no one touches them, and they make money, and the government or the government-related people make money. All the rest, so you need political will. If there is no political will, you can bring 10 Rothschilds, and nothing will move. So, when the Prime Minister goes to Davos, how many investors he can bring here? 1, 2, 3? But when you have one happy investor in Georgia, he will bring 5. And every happy investor will bring 5 and 10 investors. You know, it takes one bad story to spoil 50 success stories. But when you have 0 success stories and only bad stories, you stand where we stand today. You know, running a country is like having a bank account. You have $1 million, okay? Then you invest $200,000, you have $800,000 in your bank account. But the $200,000 that you have invested will bring you $500,000 later on. And this is how it goes. As long as, you know, you make a reform, you lose from your popularity as a government. Then the reform brings dividends, then your popularity increases. As long as you balance between the dividends that you are getting and the reforms that you are doing, you are moving the country forward and you are still remaining in power. But when you don't want to do any reform, because you don't want to lose any of your popularity, then you will wake up one morning and someone will tell you that if today we have elections, you will have 19% chances to be re-elected, as is the case today with the Georgian dream. You lose everything. This is exactly like you are raising your children, okay? If you let your children eat whatever they want, eat candies all day long, you bring them candies because you want them to be happy and not cry, and okay? Yes, your children will love you. But what will happen to them when they will be 15 and 18? They will have diabetes, their teeth will fall, okay? They will have health problems, and their life expectancy will go down dramatically. And it's the same with government and people. If all the time, you know, you give subsidies and social programs and you borrow money from abroad to create totally useless social programs that bring nothing but just bribing people, okay? Everyone will love you. But what will happen to this generation or to those Georgians in 20 years? They will remain in deep poverty, as is the case today. So that's how an irresponsible government behaves. A government that only goal is to remain in power so they can enrich themselves. But a responsible government works for the future of the country, even if this costs them staying in power. That's called good governance. Yeah, I mean, you know, we had good economic growth in 2021 and in 2022. 2021 was the pendulum effect of the COVID. You know, everywhere in most of the countries of the world, you know, the economy just boomed a lot. Just to make it up for the recession of 2020. And Georgia was one of those countries. In 2022, we benefited a lot from the war that's happening in Ukraine. And you know, all those Russians that came to Georgia, who opened bank accounts here, started their businesses, brought their employees here, started buying apartments, offices, renting, etc., going to restaurants, spending money. This has greatly contributing to improving the economic growth. And as far as I'm concerned, I never look at the figures of economic growth in Georgian laris, in local currency, because the local currency is subjected to a lot of fluctuation, so it doesn't give a clear picture. I always look at the economic growth in dollar term because the dollar is stabler than the Georgian lari. If you look at 2022, in lari we had 18% growth, but you have to remove from it the deflator, which is the inflation, which brings it to 10% growth. But in dollars, we had 30% growth. And if you remove the deflator, we will be running around 22% GDP growth in dollar, which is, according to the statistics of the statistical department, I mean, I'm judging on this, which is an incredible growth by any standard, okay? But by the same token, this is a very unreliable kind of growth because it's depending on one country only, okay? And to give you an example, in 2022, our economic dependency on Russia equaled 19% of our total economic activity. I'm not speaking of GDP, but the full economic activity. What's the full economic activity? It's the import, the exports, the foreign remittances, the money spent by the tourists here, and the foreign direct investment. So we got $5.5 billion from Russia in 2022, which is a tremendous increase compared to the year before. And this is what created this momentum. And looking at the history of Georgia and Russia, and how many times Russia did close its border to punish Georgia, anytime Russia can close the border, can stop imports, can stop exports, can stop their tourists from coming here, can stop the remittances and stop FDI. And in no time, we will lose 20% of our total economic activity, which is a disaster for the country. Now, you tell me what needs to be done. I will tell you, look, I mean, I wouldn't like to touch anything from this money. But what I would like to see the government doing is to deploying a lot of efforts to developing in other direction with other countries. So those 20% of Russia become 10%. Then we are less vulnerable. And to give you an example, in 2003 and 2012, our dependency on Russia was equal to 9% of our GDP. In 2003 and 2012, it was 9% of the GDP. Today, it's about 21-22% of the GDP, which is of the value of the GDP, which is like crazy. So the government need to think about it, but I believe that they're doing it on purpose. Because, you know, they are on purpose putting Georgia economically hostage of Russia. So if there is an attempt to change the government, Russia will say we close the border if the government change, and then everyone will be terrified. Okay, so it can be used as a weapon. And that's why they're not developing any activity with any other country, because it seems that the strategy is to increase our economic dependency on Russia, so it becomes organic at a stage that anyone who would come to replace those guys will drive the country into recession. As long as this government remains in power, the situation will remain the same. Okay, I mean, let's simplify it to this equation. All the rest, I mean, what entrepreneurs should do, should they themselves go find investors? That's manicure and pedicure, okay? It's not the core of it. As long as we have a government that's following this strategy, the results are already known, what will happen, and the situation will remain the same. So that's why, you know, we totally lost hope And that's why we don't even try to talk to the government, even I don't go to meetings with the Prime Minister. I don't attend the meetings where government officials speak. I don't. We decided to not lose time anymore because it's hopeless. This government represents everything we stand against as the ICC. Corruption, nepotism, chauvinism, homophobia, protectionism. Those are the problems that we fight all the time, okay? But when a government makes of those things their main strategy, what remains for us to discuss with this government? Nothing. And that's why, we are just waiting for a change of government that will come. That's for sure, because nothing lasts forever. And then we will see if there is another government with a different approach. Then Georgia will have a chance to find its place again on the international arena and not to be like a sideline country the way it's sidelined today by the West. We were the first one to speak of the dysfunctional judiciary here in Georgia in 2016, 2017, when everyone was considering that the judiciary was like the Georgian Orthodox Church, that no one should touch or speak about them. But we were seeing what was going on in the judiciary. And even, I accused one of the judges, myself, of being very corrupt after he issued his decision regarding Philip Morris and BAT, which was a very corrupted decision. And he sued me for slander. And I won the court case at the Supreme Court because there were still some decent judges over there. There can be no foreign investment in the country if there is no proper judiciary. A proper judiciary is the cornerstone of any thriving economy. Whenever an investor enters in a country, they have several questions about taxation, about political stability internally, about political stability externally, regionally, about the judiciary. And the judiciary is even more important than the taxation because at a stage or another, any company will have to use the judiciary for a reason or another. And today, the situation of the judiciary is dramatic. I know very few instances of foreign companies that won a court case here in Georgia in the past 10 years. The Georgian judges are systematically taking side with locals against foreigners. And this is because of the directions from the government. So many companies were defrauded here. So many companies lost their investments because of the crooked judiciary. And, we tried ourselves, and we even tried to start to speak with the authorities in 2018 of the necessity to have an ICC arbitration court. And the Minister of Justice did sign with the President of the ICC court in Paris an MOU regarding this. But then things went sour so badly that, I decided that we don't want to move with this project with this government anymore because it's totally useless. So any reform in Georgia should start with the reform of the judiciary. In my opinion, they should send all the judges back home and hire new judges totally, the same way that Saakashvili did in 2004 with the police. When they threw everyone out and they hired new guys with high salaries. This is what they need to do with the judges. Even if we stay without courts for several months, it's just fine. We will not have serious problems. Either way, today it takes years to get a court decision. So staying few months without judges is not the end of the world. Me, I look at it from the political aspect. This was a message to the government. It was not, because the sanctions of those judges were very mild, okay? It's not that they froze their bank accounts or it was just you don't get a visa, you and your family. So it's not the end of the world. However, it's a very strong political message because the United States are our number one partner since more than 30 years. I mean, the amount of money that has been spent by the US in Georgia to develop civil society, to develop businesses, to strengthen the army, to strengthen the police. I mean, no one did for Georgia as much as the United States. And when the United States, who's your number one partner, decides to sanction your judiciary, certain judges, because of wrongdoing, and definitely, I mean, those judges have issued corrupted verdicts. It's a very strong political message, and it says that's the first step. If you don't correct the track, there will be much more serious steps coming. And you know, being sanctioned is not a joke. I mean, we don't want to be among the countries that are sanctioned because it reflects on everybody. It doesn't only reflect on those judges. So I think that the government needs to take this very seriously, not because of the amplitude of the sanctions, but because of the political implications of those sanctions. Look, they understand the signal, but they don't care anymore because they chose another camp. You know, they chose to take Georgia to Russia, to work with the non-aligned countries, okay? And this will keep Georgia out of the EU, definitely. I mean, look at the visits of the Prime Minister for the past year. I mean, where did he go? He went mainly to the UAE, to Hungary, to Saudi Arabia, okay? But no one wants to receive him in Europe anymore. He goes to Brussels because, you know, he's the Prime Minister and we are candidates or whatever it is. But, you know, no one takes the Georgian government seriously. No one believes anything that the Georgian government says anymore. You know, they have been playing for several years, you know, trying to have a wife and a mistress at the same time. Yeah? Wife, which is the West, and a mistress, which is Russia. But you know, you cannot have a wife and mistress, although you cannot go to your wife, tell her I don't have a mistress, and go to your mistress, tell her I'm not married. It does not work, okay? At one stage, both of them will understand what's going on. And today they cannot play this game anymore, and they decided to play the Russian card because their only aim is to remain in power. You see? And they're ready to burn the country to remain in power, in my opinion. So let's see how this all will end, and let's see. It's time that will tell. I mean, let's be pragmatic. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the Europeans. First of all, you know, it's not only Georgia that wants to be part of Europe. Europe would like to have Georgia as part of the European family because it strengthens its geopolitical clout in the region. Okay? Georgia is an important component of this middle corridor that shortcuts Russia. So for Europe, Georgia, although it's a very small country, but its geopolitical size is much bigger than its surface area. So the Europeans are keen to have Georgia. However, today they are in a dilemma because if end of the year they accept Georgia as a candidate, this means that they are gratifying a government that is anti-European, and they are strengthening the political clout of the current government and give them a chance to win the elections of 2024, okay? By the same token, if they don't give the candidacy, they are punishing 80 or 90% of the Georgian population who are being taken hostage by this government. So, it's a very difficult choice for Europe, what to do at the end of the year. And this is what the government is playing. You see? How this game will end, I don't know. But I hope it will end in the benefit of Georgia as a country, hopefully. Look, I mean, this issue has been very mediatized. And the government really, you know, I mean, this is one of the tools that the government has used to try to get rid of their political nemesis, Mr. Kezerashvili, who is accused of financing the national movement, and who is a threat because, you know, the guy has some financial capacity, and he can, of course, spend money to strengthen the opposition. But if you look at the case and at this BBC TV documentary that we have seen, I mean, things don't add up. I mean, anyone with 1 gram of logic understand that this is totally dysfunctional. Now explain to me, I want to ask you, Mr. Kezerashvili is a wanted person in Georgia. There are several court cases pending against him. He left Georgia 12 years ago and he's wanted by the Georgian government. And everyone is running after him. How can this gentleman operate call centers in Georgia that generate tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of profit, okay? Today, if you own a bakery and you do tonelli bread and you are connected to the revenue service in real time, every bread that you produce goes on the server of the revenue service. They can do your accounting themselves, the revenue service. Now, you're going to tell me that call centers that generates hundreds of millions of dollars of profit in a corrupt country like Georgia can operate without the blessing and the patronage of the Georgian government? And how can the Georgian government bless and patron a guy that they want to arrest and put in jail? So, of course, all those call centers are handled by the Georgian government, and then they brought this Israeli journalist who also does documentaries for the BBC, and told them, look, try to find the link between those call centers and David Kezerashvili. And the guy started, you know, he put David Kezerashvili and he started looking around who is connected to this guy, and they got into the thing, but they couldn't find the link. And even in the documentary, they said we couldn't find any document that proves that Mr. Kezerashvili is called, but still they presented the documentary as if the guy is the guy who is doing it, but they couldn't find the proof that he is doing it. All this, of course, is masterminded by the government, okay, to discredit Kezerashvili, to throw the blame on him. But the bottom line, everything will show up because, you know, there is an international investigation. And the international investigation will show who is involved in it. I mean, you cannot lie to the Germans and to the French and to the Swiss and you cannot lie to them. They will find out. But, you know, this government is trying to gain time to, okay. So, what can I tell you? I mean, it's like a cartoon movie, okay? We are in a cartoon movie, as simple as that. But the good thing in cartoon movies is that everything ends up happily. And I hope that here also everything will end up happily.
Thank you, Fady. So, on this optimistic note, we can wrap up, or we can add something else.
Listen, I want to speak about corruption. You know, I mean, and I want to touch on a very particular subject. You know, when we speak of corruption, what we imagine is that, you know, there are business people who are coming, they're going to judges or to politicians, and they are telling them, look, take those $100,000 and let me do this illegal thing. This used to happen during the during the Shevardnadze's time. During the Shevardnadze's time, the businesses were corrupting officials to help them do illegal things. During the Ivanishvili's time, it's the opposite. It is the officials that are corrupting the private sector, the businesses. During the Shevardnadze's time, businesses were paying money, so Georgian officials would help them closing illegal operations. During the Ivanishvili's time, the Georgian officials are requesting bribes from the private sector to allow them to close legal operations. Legal operations. And I will give you an examples. Several companies, and I know who had court cases, okay, with the revenue services. And the court issued decisions requesting the revenue service to pay back the money to the entrepreneur. The money was not transferred till the entrepreneur, based on the request of some people at the revenue service, agreed to pay 20% of the amount as a kickback to the revenue service. Okay? Those are examples that are happening. If you go to the municipality today and you want to remove a tree from a plot of land that you bought, there is a price for it. Okay? You remove a tree, it's like, say, 3,000 laris. If you want to build an extra floor, you have to pay in cash $20,000. If you want to take this GRG, this construction permit, the way you want it, it's $200,000 in cash. Okay? But this is your right. And I'll give you another example. One foreign investor who has a very big plot of land somewhere, he sold some of the land in this very big property that he owns to some people who are, one of them is a parliamentarian of the Georgian Dream. And the guy built several stories building. The owner of this land applied at the municipality to build the same level of height as his neighbor who bought the land from him. He was refused. Why? Because they want cash to do it. So, this is a bribe requested by the officials from a private entrepreneurship to facilitate a legal operation. It is his right to do it. Okay? So, this is the major problem now. So, for me, today, the corruption is worse than during the Shevardnadze's time, because those things were not happening during the Shevardnadze's time. Now, I want to touch on another kind of corruption. You know, corruption is not just money passing. Corruption is when you close your eyes on wrongdoing. You know, chairs of business associations who play nice with the government all the time, who close their eyes on the wrongdoing, who don't protect their members, are corrupt. This is corruption. Heads of international financial institutions or international bodies in Georgia who send the wrong message to their offices abroad saying that no, everything is good here. Why? Because they are scared that if they say that there is corruption, their budgets will shrink and their program will stop. Those guys are corrupt as well. Ambassadors who don't protect their nationals from pressure from the authorities because they don't want the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia to send a report complaining about them, are corrupt. So, it's very easy to accuse the Georgian authorities to be corrupt, but corruption is widespread everywhere, within the civil society of Georgia, within the diplomatic corps, and within international financial institutions. And we have to speak about it, because this is shameful. Those are the guys who come and give us lessons about how to be transparent, and how not to be corrupt, and how to be honest. And many of them are not transparent, are not honest, and are corrupt. I wanted to speak about this issue because this is what's keeping this government in power. This is what's keeping any government, a corrupt government, in power. It's the silence of those who have a vested interest in continuing their business in a corrupted environment. Me, you know me, I'm like the most transparent person. I never paid a bribe in Georgia. I never took a bribe from anybody. I fought everyone, even with my business. You know, I mean, how many, we had a murder, we had kidnappings, our offices were bombed, all this because I always refused. For me, it's a matter of principle. And when I see that I'm like Don Quixote against the windmills, and my colleagues or other people who are coming here to give us lessons of transparencies are as corrupt as the authorities, I don't care. And this is what makes the strength of the ICC here in Georgia. We don't take money from donors. We don't take money from government. We don't take money. Why? Because we want to keep our free thinking, our freedom of thought, our independence. And if you don't have people who speak the truth, things will never move forward. Look, let me tell you, the situation is very bad in Georgia, that's a fact. But me, I'm an optimist by nature. And you know, this government has pushed their luck so much that they cannot remain in power for very long. You know, you cannot have everybody against you. I mean, you need to have somebody with you. Now everyone is against them. 80% of the population wants to be part of Europe, okay? The intention of vote for them is 19%, okay? They have the West against them, Europe, the United States, Australia. I mean, the civilized world is against them. You know, they don't have any support. They're trying to get some support from Russia. And I will tell you, they will not go without a fight. You know, I mean, they can drown Georgia in blood because, I'll tell you, they had done so many terrible things during those 10 years. In corruption, in crimes, I mean, you name it. That they are trying to save their asses. Because if the government changes, many of them will be in prison. This I can guarantee you. And they're trying to save their asses. So they will do anything that they can to keep themselves in power, even if it is like total dictatorship, even if it's throwing people in jail, like cutting relation with the West, they will do anything to stay in power, okay? But this radicalism has no future. You know, the more you dig, the deeper you go, and the more sand will bury you. And this is what will happen, you know. Now they are running ahead of them without looking behind, just like in the same line, and at the end they will hit the wall and they will fall. And that's why I'm optimistic. I mean, the more radical statements I hear from them, the happier I am, because I know that the more radical they become, the faster they will be out. And so I have this kind of optimism, you see. But you tell me I'm not sad for what happened in the past 10 years. Of course I'm sad. I'm not sad to see that where we are standing today at a time it could be like Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia. Of course I am sad. I'm not sad to see that we were a shining star in the international world and now we are like at the edge of the society. I'm very sad. But you know, all this can change very quickly if we have a proper government that has vision where to take Georgia and how to take Georgia. And I have this hope that this will happen. And soon, hopefully. Before even the elections of 2024. Look, I don't see a team of professionals in the shadow right now. But I know that there are some good people in the opposition. Maybe they're not very strong politically, but they can eventually play the role of the catalyst to move things forward once there is a change. And the change will come. Even a coalition government would be better than this government. Doesn't matter. But you know, criminality should stop. Harassment should stop. Racket should stop. The country needs to go back to the West. I'm not saying, you know, you can be in the West without adopting everything that's in the West. And this is what the radicals don't understand. You know, what do you think? Me, I'm like, with this woke culture, I'm a supporter. I'm not a supporter of the woke culture, okay? I am, in my own way, a kind of conservative on certain issues. I believe in freedom, as I always told my kids since they were very young. I told them, in life, whatever you do, you will be criticized. You do something good, you will be criticized. You do something bad, you will be criticized. And at some stage, you will not know what to do. So I will tell you what to do. It's very simple. Ask yourself 2 questions. Am I harming myself by doing this, yes or no? Am I harming anyone else by doing this, yes or no? If you're not harming yourself or harming anyone else, do whatever you want and don't give a shit of what people think. And here, if we go back to the LGBTQ issue, okay? Everyone is free to do whatever they want with their body. What does a gay guy hurt anybody else, or a lesbian, or a whatever? It's their freedom. But what, for example, I don't like is when, they organize this huge pride in Georgia, the pride parade. Listen, no one is asking you not to be gay. It's your right. And if you want to be, I will encourage you as well. But you need to understand that by going publicly like this, you are offending some people, okay? This means you are hurting some people. And this is where I'm against you, because you are hurting somebody else. Anything you want to do that does not hurt other people or hurt yourself, do whatever you want. I spent 13 years of my life in a Catholic religious school, where we had every morning at 7 o'clock go to church, where we had 3 times a week religious instruction. So I know more about the Bible and the Old Testament and the New Testament and the saints and Jesus Christ and then 99.9% of the clerics here in Georgia, okay? And when I see what the clerics do, it drives me nuts, okay? So, why? Because there is, in any country of the world, if you want to become a priest, you have to go to university, get a philosophy degree, and after that, study religious studies, okay, for 4 or 5 years or 7 years even. Then you become a priest. Here in Georgia, you have a thief and a criminal that are totally bankrupt. They don't have any dollar. They go to monastery 6 months, and then they come out and they want to teach me how to be a good Christian, okay? Why? Because there is a problem of education. And that's why there should be a huge investment in educating the new generation, okay? What is doable, what's not doable, what is logical, what is not logical. But when you have people who are gullible, who trust anything, yes, those uneducated people will have the upper hand. So, when we speak of Georgian culture, there are things that need to be kept, because they are the fundament of Georgian society. They are the things that make Georgia the beautiful country that is. But there are things that are taken to the extreme that need to be trimmed. Like, you have an old tree. If you don't trim it, it will never flower again and give fruits. You need to trim all those dead branches to keep Georgia flourishing with its millenarian culture.
I wish to thank you once again, dear Fady, for this very, very interesting conversation, and I hope we shall continue this.
We will always. Thank you so much for taking this interview, and I hope it will be of interest to whoever wants to listen to the truth.
We cover what matters. Caucasian Journal.